The crisis in Lebanon has cast a long shadow over the UN General Assembly that's on this week in New York. France, the U.S. and other allies proposed there a 21-day ceasefire, but that was flatly refused by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's due to speak there later this week. We're going to talk more about all of this now with our Jessica Le Masurier, who joins me from the UN. Jessica, what more can you tell us?
Well, the French Foreign Minister put forward this proposal. It's a joint proposal from France, the US and their allies. He put it forward to the Security Council last night, asking for both parties to respond to this idea of having a temporary ceasefire, a 21-day pause in the fighting so that negotiations can take place. It's not even really a proper ceasefire. It's just a pause to talk about a ceasefire. But even that does not at this point appear acceptable to either side. Netanyahu has told his army to continue going full force. And so this frenzy of diplomatic activity continues here at the United Nations in the hope that there will be some language that will be acceptable to both sides for a pause in the fighting. It appears that the Israelis will not agree to anything that they do not believe will guarantee the return of their citizens to their homes and safety for Israelis. And as far as the Lebanese are concerned, well, the Lebanese government, of course, is not the problem. They are helping with the negotiations with Hezbollah and active in this diplomacy. But Hezbollah wants any kind of ceasefire also to be coupled with a ceasefire in Gaza. The idea would be, of course, that this pause could then also facilitate a sort of a jumpstart, a push for those negotiations on a ceasefire in Gaza, which have been ongoing. We do have a Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, but that has not been implemented.
Now, Jessica, you mentioned the Security Council, and the head of the UN, Antonio Guterres, slammed that deeply divided council for failing to show leadership, in his words, to end wars in Gaza, for example. And that's really just part of growing concern, both inside and outside the UN, that the body itself and the whole global system is broken.
That's quite right. The Security Council has not been able to end the war in Ukraine. It has not been able to end the war in Gaza. Now it's facing extreme difficulty stopping the fighting between Hezbollah and Israel. It's not been able to stop the war in Sudan. There is a lot of frustration, a lot of dysfunction. And really, the frustration is targeted at the Security Council because that is the body that makes international law. And that is the body which has been so paralyzed when it comes to passing resolutions to stop conflicts around the world. And that's largely because of the 5 veto-holding members using their veto power to block these resolutions. So there have been calls for the reform of the system to make it reflect our current world and to prevent powers which are deeply involved in conflicts, or let's say in the case of Russia and Ukraine, which have actually invaded their neighbour, from blocking resolutions on solving those conflicts. Emmanuel Macron spoke about it in depth in his speech here at the General Assembly this week. He said, you know, there are a lot of people who say we should just throw the UN in the bin. But no, we should fix it because we need the UN to represent hope. And he said that what is needed is Security Council reform for new members to be on that council and for the veto in the Security Council to be restricted when it comes to cases of war crimes or mass atrocities.
Jessica, thank you. Jessica Le Masurier, they're reporting for us from the UN in New York.